In the year 2000, Blockbuster had the chance to buy Netflix for just $50 million. They said no. At the time, the decision seemed obvious. Blockbuster was the undisputed king of home entertainment. More than 50 million Americans visited its stores every month. Thousands of locations stretched across the United States and dozens of other countries. On Friday nights, parking lots were packed with families looking for the perfect movie. Netflix? It was a tiny startup that mailed DVDs in red envelopes. Why would anyone trade a billion-dollar empire for a company that barely anyone had heard of? 10 years later, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. Netflix went on to become one of the most valuable entertainment companies in the world. But here's the surprising part. Rejecting Netflix wasn't actually the mistake that destroyed Blockbuster. The real reason is far more interesting, and it began years before anyone had ever heard the word streaming. To understand how one of America's biggest brands disappeared almost overnight, we have to go back to where it all started. When Blockbuster opened its first store in Dallas, Texas in 1985, renting a movie was often a frustrating experience. Most video rental stores were small, poorly organized, and stocked with limited selections. Finding a popular movie usually meant arriving early and hoping someone else hadn't already rented the last copy. Blockbuster changed everything. Its stores were bright, clean, and enormous. Instead of a few hundred tapes, customers could choose from thousands of titles. Inventory was tracked by computers, making the experience faster and far more reliable than anything competitors could offer. The company wasn't simply opening video stores, it was building a national brand, and Americans loved it. Throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, Blockbuster expanded at an astonishing pace. New stores seemed to appear everywhere: shopping centers, suburban neighborhoods, busy intersections. Before long, the company had thousands of locations around the world. Then, in 1994, media giant Viacom purchased Blockbuster for $8.4 billion. The acquisition looked like the beginning of an even bigger future. With Hollywood relationships, enormous financial resources, and a household name recognized across America, Blockbuster appeared almost impossible to beat. But hidden inside its incredibly successful business model was a weakness that almost nobody noticed: late fees. Customers hated them. Everyone who rented movies remembers the feeling. You forgot to return a VHS tape or later a DVD for a few days. Suddenly, a $5 rental had turned into a $15 bill. People complained constantly, but Blockbuster had very little reason to listen, because those late fees generated an estimated $800 million every year. For Blockbuster, they weren't a small bonus. They were one of the company's biggest profit engines. As long as customers kept coming back, executives saw no reason to change. Then, a small startup began offering something completely different. Netflix launched in 1997 with a simple idea. Instead of driving to a store, customers could order DVDs online and receive them through the mail. No searching crowded shelves, no rushing to return movies before closing time, and most importantly, no late fees. That single difference completely changed how people thought about renting movies. Netflix wasn't asking customers to behave differently. It was removing the thing they hated most. At first, Blockbuster barely noticed. Why would they? They had thousands of stores. Netflix had almost none. Then, around the year 2000, Netflix co-founders Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph reportedly approached Blockbuster with an offer: buy Netflix for around $50 million. According to Hastings and Randolph, Blockbuster executives weren't interested. They believed online DVD rentals were a niche business that would never replace physical stores. Looking at the numbers back then, their confidence almost made sense. Blockbuster generated billions in annual revenue. Netflix was still losing money. But while Blockbuster focused on protecting the business it already had, Netflix focused on building the business customers would eventually want. That difference changed everything. Still, saying Blockbuster failed because it ignored Netflix oversimplifies the story. In fact, Blockbuster eventually copied almost everything Netflix was doing. It launched its own DVD by mail service. It invested heavily in digital initiatives, and in 2005, it even announced the end of late fees. For a moment, it looked like Blockbuster might actually win. Its subscription service, called Total Access, allowed customers to rent movies online and exchange them in local stores. Customers loved it. Some analysts even believed Total Access offered a better experience than Netflix because it combined online convenience with thousands of physical locations. So why didn't it work? Because success created a new problem. Every customer who switched to Total Access became less profitable. Running thousands of retail stores was incredibly expensive. Rent, utilities, inventory, employee salaries, maintenance. Netflix didn't carry those costs. Every month, the gap between the two companies grew wider. Then another problem surfaced: debt. Years of rapid expansion and corporate acquisitions had left Blockbuster with roughly $1 billion in debt. Instead of investing aggressively in the future, much of the company's cash flow went toward keeping the existing business alive. And then came a decision that rarely gets mentioned. Blockbuster's online strategy was working, but it was expensive. Investors became concerned about short-term profits. Leadership changed. The company pulled back from the aggressive expansion of Total Access, sacrificing long-term growth to improve quarterly financial results. Netflix did exactly the opposite. It kept investing. Then, in 2007, Netflix made the move that permanently changed entertainment: streaming. Today, watching movies online feels completely normal. Back then, it sounded almost unrealistic. Internet speeds were still improving. Streaming libraries were small. Picture quality wasn't always great. But Netflix understood something Blockbuster didn't. Technology doesn't have to be perfect. It only has to keep getting better. Every year, internet connections became faster. Every year, streaming became easier. Meanwhile, every Blockbuster store became a little less necessary. And that's what made the company's biggest strength turn into its biggest weakness. Thousands of stores had once been a competitive advantage. Now they were thousands of expensive buildings that fewer people needed to visit. Then came the 2008 financial crisis. Consumers cut spending. Retail traffic declined. Credit became harder to obtain. For a company already carrying massive debt, the timing couldn't have been worse. In September 2010, Blockbuster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was one of the largest corporate collapses in modern retail history. Over the following years, stores closed one after another. Entire shopping centers lost the familiar blue and yellow sign that had once symbolized Friday night entertainment. Today, only one Blockbuster remains. It's located in Bend, Oregon. Ironically, people don't visit because they need to rent movies. They visit because they miss the experience. Walking through the aisles, reading the movie boxes, arguing with friends about what to watch. For many people, Blockbuster isn't just a store. It's a reminder of a completely different era. But the company's biggest lesson has nothing to do with movies. Blockbuster didn't fail because people stopped watching films. People actually watched more entertainment than ever before. Blockbuster failed because customer expectations changed faster than the company was willing or able to change with them. The story isn't really about Netflix. It's about what happens when a successful company becomes trapped by the business model that made it successful in the first place. Sometimes the biggest threat isn't a competitor. It's believing that tomorrow will look exactly like today. And history has proven, again and again, that it never does. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more fascinating business failures, surprising success stories, and the decisions that changed entire industries forever.